All right, guys. So this is the Sight and Sound poll 2022 that I'm going to be reacting to. Um, I wanted to wait a week before I made my reactions and my not critiques of the list, but more like retrospective sort of stuff on it, just because it's such a different list compared to the past. Well, really any years that they had ran this poll, and I just wanted to go through that not real quick. It's probably going to be a long video, but I wanted to say that yes, lists are arbitrary. Yes, lists are is not going to be a definitive way that you're going to view a great all-time thing. Because from my perspective, I'm a music guy, right? So back in the day, like what, circa like 2008 to 2012, Pitchfork put out these best of decades albums or lists or just the greatest of all time, right? The GOAT. And in the 1970s, David Bowie's Low is rated as number one, if I recall. And I'm obviously, well, not obviously, but I'm not going to agree with that ranking. But at the same time, a list is not there for it to be definitive, in my opinion, even though that's what it states. It's to go through and just pick and choose on what you like. Why is this considered great? What makes it great? At the end of the day, it's all within your own mind and what you consider great yourself, right? And that's the trick, and that's what really the curtain has been pulled back in the past few years, is that there's really no definitive canon or anything like that. Obviously, we've been told for years that Don Quixote is great, which it is, but if you ask another person, it may not be the case or what have you. It's this whole philosophical thing on like what modernity has done to like sort of destroy like canonical lists or what have you, which I won't get into because I'm not smart enough to. And also, this is just a little fun little exercise. But I just wanted to go through this list, and really two lists were made from this, and it was the directors and the critics. And what makes Sight and Sound so important compared to like Rolling Stones or Pitchfork lists or anything like that, right? Sight and Sound has been around since 1952. Its first greatest film of all time, I believe, was Bicycle Thieves. Looking at the Wikipedia article here, nah, I kid, but which Bicycle Thieves is a great film. But Citizen Kane, everyone, well, not everyone, but it's lauded for being the greatest film of all time. Why? Because it was in the Sights and Sounds poll, right? So, of course, as the years go on and cracks began to form, within this, I'm sorry, I'll go back. As the years have gone by, Sight and Sound eventually became canonical, right? Which it never was meant to be canonical. It was supposed to field this question for journalists, film critics, film directors of what is the greatest film of all time. It never meant to have the same exact entries or the same exact lists over and over again. But back 30, 40 years ago, it was really hard to get a hold of these films, to watch them, unless you went out and sought after it. So it was very difficult to do so. So that's why I think that we eventually accepted Citizen Kane as like the greatest film of all time, which even now I would still say that if I had to pick a greatest film of all time, it would be no better, just due to the subject matter of the film itself, right? It goes hand in hand with that. But with that being said, we get to 2012. Vertigo was ranked number one. So obviously, there was already a fault within the system that had been so concrete for the past, at that point, 50 years. And now this year was a seismic shift, and one that I did not see coming, even though I should have. So the past 10 years for really films itself and has changed. Streaming, the way that we take in movies, we have so many different options, so many different ways to view movies, that this is such a now in 2022, now eventually going to be 2023. We have so many different options, so many different ways of viewing movies. I just said that, sorry, but um, you have just so many ways to view it, and now critics' tastes have changed. Moreover, to where there is more representation within their top list or what have you. And what do I mean by that? And the more controversial thing about this list which people have gone into, including Paul Schrader, famous director and writer of Taxi Driver, has stated that the weight was pushed down for more representation for black, for more women, for more queer themes in films, right? Which I don't think is a bad thing, because at the same time, I don't take a list as to be definitive, and everyone should take it as that. But Sight and Sound is different, right? It became canonical when it shouldn't have been. And now that we have changed as really a culture, in that we're try to, okay, well, what was made by, like, try to get outside of our comfort zone here. Like, right, I was raised on like Deliverance, right? No Country for Old Men, all these, like, not faux Southern Gothic, but like, these films about violence and its ways of justice and such. And that's not everyone's background, because I mean, I live in the southern U.S., and we all would like to have some sort of like broadening of our minds. We would like to watch films that are sort of completely different from our sort of background, right? If I wanted to watch a movie about like the mafia, for example, like if you lived in New York, you watch Scorsese films, right? Me just being just location wise, like sort of biased there, but I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is that yes, I think to say that it's essentially being naive to not say that that there is no representation, and that there is. I'm sorry. It would be bad to say that this is representation based on the critics and what they feel is the greatest film of all time. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that 90% of people would watch, and spoiler alert, it's Joan Dillman is number one, which is a great movie, I think, in my opinion. I think it operates within its own gravity, its own universe, and its own, and if you throw things in there, it's just a very different movie to watch, and I love the movie. But that's not to say that like 90% of people are going to watch the movie and feel totally enthralled as I am, right? But that gets into a whole argument of, okay, subjective, objective, and obviously that's been destroyed. So if we look here, right, and it starts off, and this is the critics list, mind you, right? And we start off brazenly with Jordan Peele's Get Out from 2017. And to say that Get Out is a better film than Days of Heaven, Tree of Life, performance, I don't know. I think City Lights is actually above this, but there is a lot of movie, Life of Colonel Blimp, right? There's a lot of movies that Get Out knocked out, and I feel that the critics wanted to make it a sort of way where they just wanted to include movies that, they wanted more representation of those said characteristics, like I informed of earlier in this video. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because it gives people, some sort of guideline to view these movies. Not so that, like, okay, like for example, if I go down to number 30, where a Portrait of a Lady on Fire, right? It's not better than 8.5. I'm sorry. It's not better than Psycho. It's not better than Mirror. Okay. Like, it's just not. But with that being said, like, it's still interesting enough for me to be like, okay, sure. Like, why not? Like, Daisies is 28th, right? This is a completely, I think, a new one, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that's completely fine. I mean, I think Daisies is a good film as well. I think that people should give these movies a try, but again, not definitive, like I stated before. So if we keep on scrolling down, I mean, it's pretty standard affair. Some movies that you like. I think La Ventura was the biggest drop out of all of the critics list, and I think it's a good movie, and I understand why people don't like it. Well, especially critics don't. It's just definitely like a meditation on just bourgeois life is what I could say. Andrei Rublev being 67th is very tragic to me because it's my favorite Andrei Tarkovsky film. And Red Shoes, I like I like other Powell and Pressburger movies, but it's just different stuff. Like Goodfellas, for example. I don't think this was near the top 100 last time, and I do think that even in my sort of negative review, not negative review, but like my reservations for Raging Bull, I think that Raging Bull should be in this position that Goodfellas should be in, even though the Goodfellas is a very entertaining movie. The Apartment, I think, jumped up, and that's absolutely wonderful. I love that. The Piano being number 50, okay. Not the biggest fan of that film, but yeah, I love Harvey Keitel, so definitely watch that. Wanda. Um, and you see the films here that you have saw through Sight and Sound. I mean, they're still here. Some have dropped off. I think the biggest one was Godfather Part 2 that a lot of people loved. I love it more than the first part. And when it dropped off, I mean, okay, sure. And this is a guy that's like been watching, well, not watching, but viewing these polls for the past 2 decades. And I think, well, not 2 decades, 1 decade, right? And that's okay. Like I said, it's not a definitive list itself. I think my favorite thing that has happened, and really both the directors and the critics list, is that Close Up has number 17th on the critics and number 9th, and I can't wait for my review of this on a next video. But it's a wonderful movie. It's one of the greatest of all time, and I definitely would recommend this movie. It's Kiarostami's masterpiece, right? But the rest of these are fine. Like, and to give like Paul Schrader's like sort of conspiratorial like a thing in motion, I do find it strange that Meshes of the Afternoon and Cleo from 5 to 7 is sort of it sandwiches The Searchers at number 15, which, noticing from like the female representation here, The Searchers should be way lower, in terms of the critics list, because it's, there's a lot of stuff that like I think the modern audiences would object to, but yet it's still number 15. So at the time of this recording, Sight and Sound hasn't released the critics list at all. So I do think that is not telling, but it's definitely different. But we'll go through the top 10 and we'll go ahead and look here. Sad the song that Sun Rises outside the top 10. And most of these movies, I actually looked at Sight and Sound and really watched these movies and enjoyed, and Sunrise was definitely one of them, one of the highlights. Singing in the Rain, I think it's returned to the top 10 if I'm not mistaken. And Singing in the Rain is a great movie. It's a satire and a celebration of Hollywood at once, and it's a wonderful movie, even if you don't like musicals. Man with the Movie Camera by Dziga Vertov is again a wonderful movie. I have the Flickr Alley version. It's just a tour de force of I do love how brave it was back in the 1920s, where most 1920s films were based off of literary text. It wasn't really original in a sense, and Man with the Movie Camera is definitely original, and it definitely deserves a spot in the top 10. Mulholland Drive, less to say about it the better, and it's not that I don't like David Lynch. I love his earlier works, but like once he made like Wild at Heart and went on to and did Twin Peaks, like I'll be able to explain that more in a future video. Beau Travail, just watched this one yesterday, and I think that Beau Travail, is a really good film about style, and it's a wonderful film, like in terms of that and the way that it was edited, put together, cinematography wise. Denis Lavant, I believe his name is. I think he was a good leading actor, but something about it, I think it is the narrative that is sort of the weak point of the film, and that I just don't really care much for. I think the ending scene is great. Everyone lauds that, but not one of my favorites. 2001: A Space Odyssey, it's a great film. Nothing needs to be said more on that. In the Mood for Love, I like Chungking Express more than this movie, but I mean, if it's like a representative of Wong Kar-wai in general. I understand that. Um, Tokyo Story, of course, not my favorite Ozu film. I like An Autumn Afternoon, Late Spring better, but whatever, that's fine. And Citizen Kane, Vertigo, and of course Joan Dillman. So, and of course you go to the director's poll, and it is not completely different, but it sort of has like the same mixture of films that a lot of people call more, more authoritative, I would say, like more than the critics, because people just hate it that much. Like, look, Raging Bull is 22nd, nowhere near on the critics list, right? It pains me as a John Cassavetes film guy to see Woman Under the Influence at 19 and nowhere on the critics list. So shame on you, critics. Watch every single movie. Like, if I was like the film police, I would put all those critics like in a room, and well, the ones that didn't vote for John Cassavetes, and just be like, look, you're watching all this guy's filmography from front to back. Like, pick one, you know. But of course, like that's my perfect world. So yeah, and that's the reason why I can't hate this list overall, is because Close Up is just, it's getting its props. It needs to be more well known. It's an incredible work of art. It's and as well as Taste of Cherry is Kiarostami's masterpiece, that and Close Up. But anyway, yeah, I do like the director's list more, but because it is more, I would say it's a lot more. I'm trying to think of the word here. It's a lot more. It's a lot more stable than the critics list, and it's also a lot more. It's like Come and See is 41, right? And I hear some people that state, "Oh, well, this is all Twitter influenced, not Instagram, gosh, Letterboxd or anything." I disagree with that, just because there's the Letterboxd 250 that I don't see 12 Angry Men on this list. I don't see a single Kobayashi movie on this. No Human Condition, no Harakiri, which was very surprising as well. So definitely, and if I go to the top 100 of this, Taste of Cherry is up in 93rd, and Michael Haneke, Cachet or Hidden, it's 93rd. Tiber 93rd. Color of Pomegranates, I absolutely love. Hate that it wasn't on the critics list. So yeah, just, and of course Searchers is 72nd. Where's a Friend's House? Solo, 120 Days. The only Piero Pasolini film that appears on either of this list. I think he made better movies, but I think that Solo is his most important. And let me see here. Viridiana, like no Buñuel movie in the critics 100. So that's why I think it's very divisive. I think that the critics list is, and I think that like Harold Bloom said that in the Western canon, when he tried to create this canon itself, he decried like this sort of, not revisionism, but like this sort of thing that Sight and Sound did, is this sort of age of resentment, right? Where it's more of like putting politics in films, putting like gender studies in films that sort of reject history and tries to create its own. And maybe I get that context wrong, but with that being said, it's just very interesting to really put that all into perspective here. And I don't necessarily like agree or disagree with it, but I really do think of that theory when I think of like Meshes in the Afternoon and Cleo 5 at 16 and 14. It's just very strange how that was ranked. And then also in the director's poll, Nicholas Roeg, I don't believe there's a Roeg film in this. So I do think that moving forward, we can look at these movies in sort of the same way that, you know, we just picked them out and we love them for what they are. But moving forward, is this a definitive list to really go off of and to really take time with and such? That's left up to you, I think, because there's still a lot of great films on here. Chungking Express, Parasite, Pro Le Fou, Histoire de Cinema, which that's about to go out of print, and I missed my chance to get that. I should have watched it, but Satan Tango being 78th, Sancho the Bailiff being 75th just pains me to no end. But yeah, I can definitely understand. But so those are really my thoughts on this list. And if you have any thoughts, any comments, anything that you were disappointed in the list, also Sans Soleil being 59th, I really love, and that's one of my favorite films ever by Chris Marker. So definitely give a like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. But thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. Thank you so much.